Yo, how's it going, guys? It is I, the man that they call Saint Stan, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've been seeing some of these, tier videos that's been going around the internet recently, talk about, your favorite game, your favorite album, movie, all that kind of stuff, and I figured, and I might as well try that as well, because, I like wanting to do other things than just me talking about video games 24/7 because I'm a lazy bum. So what I want to do is that I want to go ahead and do a little bit of a tier list of easily without a doubt the best Rise Against albums I've listened to, or at least not the best, but my personal favorites and the albums that I really do like. And you're entitled to have your own opinion as well. If you want to go ahead and tell me what your favorite album by them is, I'm totally fine with that. But this is just my personal tier list. I didn't make it though, but this is just my tier list. This is how I would definitely rank them. So let's get started. So we're gonna go ahead and we have their first album over here, the one and only The Unraveling, the first album that came out by them, ever. And as a first album, it definitely does show that. It's not a bad album, it's definitely not a good album, but it's their first album. And while I personally don't think it's an absolute classic, I mean, there are still some songs in this album that I actually do kind of like a little bit. I will definitely say that right now. And I think in terms of just how the band would later evolve as time went on because of their raw energy, I think it succeeds in almost every front because of that. But with that said though, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that this would be the first album I would have you listen by them, but it wouldn't hurt to try it out either. I'm just probably gonna go ahead and put it in the C column right here. The next album, the one and only Revolutions Per Minute, their follow-up album that came out in 2003. Now, this is still when the band was still signed to Fat Records, I believe. And this is pretty much The Unraveling, but in a more, I wouldn't necessarily say mature, but more or less in the sense of maybe more they have more things they want to talk about, they want to branch out and expand. The first album, in my opinion, just really didn't have a lot of meaning for what it was trying to convey, whereas, and even then, it didn't really do a great job at it. But this album tried to take what The Unraveling was trying to do and actually made it even more enjoyable, in my opinion. There are a lot more songs that I find even more hardcore. It's a lot more energy. It's a lot more louder, too. And I personally do think that this is a really damn good album. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any means, but it is definitely a great album for me to listen to, so I'm going to put it in the B column. Siren Song of the Counterculture. Now, this is actually my personal favorite Rise Against album in terms of, connections and relatability. I think that Siren Song of the Counterculture might be my personal favorite album by them in a long shot. It's my favorite album by them in general. We'll talk about that later. But in terms of, just how much this album really meant to me, because I listened to this band way back in 2013, and I've always had this very strong connective feeling towards this album, plus the next album later down the road. And this album just completely knocked it out of the park, and I think it did a really damn good job with that. Granted, this was also the first album in which they went major, and I know that a lot of people were not really happy about that. But, I mean, just because you went major doesn't mean you can't still make good music, okay? It's only a major record label, okay? That's why the term phrase selling out is kind of a dumb thing to say. Unless if you really do sell out, in which case then you are actually a corporate sellout. With that said, though, I don't think that this album is bad. In fact, I don't even think that them going major actually affected my personal experience. This is just The Unraveling, but with a cleaner production. And I know many people don't like the cleaner production, but I personally do. And you know what? That's why I really enjoy this album a lot more. Okay, the songs from beginning to end, whether it's the singles like Give It All or Paper Wings or more specifically Swing Life Away, those songs are great. My personal favorite track, though, has got to be The Rumors of My Demise Has Greatly Been Exaggerated. That is, in my humble opinion, one of the most overlooked albums, or one of the most overlooked songs by them. and I really, really hope they play that song again live someday. I really, really enjoy that song so much. Off topic, by the way, but I know for a fact that they were supposed to play at a Pier 13 Live. I wanted to go, but unfortunately, that's never gonna happen. So, yeah, that'll suck. Alright, the next one. The Sufferer and the Witness. This was another Rise Against album that, in my opinion, had a very strong connection towards, because I think this was actually the first album I've listened by them, if I'm not mistaken. It was this one and then Siren Song, I think. But unlike Siren Song, I think this album really hasn't really been all that better the more I listen to it. Don't get me wrong. It's a great album. It's a really good album. I enjoyed it. I thought that the album is really enjoyable. You know, the songs here are great, and you know, the production is still as top notch as ever, even if it's cleaner. But I don't know, after listening to this one and then listening to Siren Song, I think this one kind of aged a little bit less, in my opinion. Granted, Tim's vocals were pretty much becoming better as time went on, so at least I could definitely give them points for that. But besides that, though, I wouldn't necessarily call it like one of my personal favorites, but it's so good for what it's worth. Okay, Appeal to Reason. Now, this album was pretty much the starting point of the whole Rise Against hate bandwagon. This was the album that kind of like made so many people kind of, you know, wonder why exactly this band is what it is today. And personally speaking, I liked it. I liked it. I thought the album was really great. I enjoyed my time with the album. I know that this is also the first album that had Zach Blair as the lead guitarist, because their previous guitarist, I think it was Chris Chase, left the band, so they had to get Zach Blair, which I know a lot of people hate for some reason. I don't know why. The dude was in freaking Gwar, for God's sakes. I mean, he was in Gwar. How can you hate someone who was in Gwar? I mean, come on, man. But yeah, you know, I mean, Appeal to Reason, I mean, it's not the album that got a lot of hate. I can definitely understand why some people won't like it, but I think it was still a really good album overall, in my humble opinion. It's not like my personal favorite Rise Against album, but in terms of just like how the album flows and the meanings, and you know, again, this came out in 2008. This was like when I think George Bush was about to was done being the president, and that was when like the 2008 presidential election was going to happen. I think that was when this album came out, in October, maybe. I think so. Yeah, I think it was October. So it came out. Dare I say, I think it came out at the perfect time, in my humble opinion. I'm not sure if that was like a coincidence or not, but this album just came out at like the really perfect time, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good album. Endgame. You know, I've re-listened to this album. I've re-listened to all of them, by the way, all of the albums, and okay, I'll say this right now: it's not a bad album. And no Rise Against album is bad. Not even the one we're gonna talk about next. No Rise Against album is bad. But during this time, I think that this might be the weakest album that they put out in terms of them going major. I think this might be the weakest one they made. I don't know what it was about this album. Maybe it's the songs themselves. There really weren't that many songs that completely clicked with me all that much. I mean, Make It Stop was a really good song, and I guess Help Is On The Way is a really good song as well. I like that song as well. But then you get stuff like Midnight Hands, and I forgot the name of that one song right away. I think that's how it went. That was just like, eh. But I mean, it wasn't a bad album. It's just that, like, compared to like Appeal to Reason, like, it wasn't really as memorable. You know what I mean? But yeah, Endgame, it has to go in the C column. But it's not necessarily a C. It's more like a C+. But you know, I have to put it in the C column because, well, I can't do a C+. The Black Market. Oh boy. This album. This is the album that a lot of people really don't like by them. You know, many people hate this album. They do. They call this the worst album they've put out. I don't see it. No, I don't see it being the worst album they put out. Granted, I mean, not all the songs are great either, but I mean, there are some decent songs on here. I think the only reason why people don't like this album is because, like, the band just has nothing to talk about, you know? They need to go out of, like, their comfort zone. You know what I mean? But I know that this album gets a lot of bad rep by Rise Against fans. I personally speaking, I don't think this album is bad. I think people are just overreacting. This is the same Rise Against fanfare that we've been getting since, I think, 2004, technically speaking, with Siren Song. And in my humble opinion, I think People's Live Here is a better acoustic song that they put out than Swing Life Away. I know I probably pissed off a lot of people by saying that, but I don't care. It has some memorable moments here and there. And I personally do like it. It's not even a guilty pleasure. It's just more like, I like this album, okay? I do. I like this album. I like what they tried to do. Oh, and then we have this one, Long Forgotten Songs. It's literally just a B-sides record, really. Just a B-sides and never released songs, which technically speaking, some of them kind of were, because I think some of the songs they were used in, like, movies and TV show soundtracks. I think they made a song for, like, I know one of their songs that was cut from Appeal to Reason appeared in the Punisher movie, Punisher Warzone, where, like, someone was doing flips at a rocket launcher, and then, like, the Punisher just blew him up. Or no, he was doing flips on a rooftop, and then the Punisher blew him up with a rocket launcher. And all that while the song was playing in the background. That was hilarious. And then they made a song for, like, Injustice, I think. Or, like, it was another unreleased song, but it was part of the Injustice soundtrack. I don't know. It's literally what it is. It's a B-sides record, you know. It's not that bad. It's not that harmless. I like it. It's more or less just a B-side thing, really. Wolves. This is also the first Rise Against record to be released after Donald Trump's inauguration into the office. I like this album. I will admit, first listen, I thought this was a really good album. I thought this is their best work. Now, after listening to it again, it's still a really good album, you know. It still has that. The band is kind of like going back a little bit to their more hardcore, not hardcore, but more like their just more aggressive style, whereas Appeal to Reason or Endgame or The Black Market, they just kind of like went a little bit too softer and to a degree at times. Plus time. Sorry about that. But Wolves is kind of like the point where they were like, okay, we're gonna go a little bit more aggressive on this one. We have Donald Trump at the office. We got to do that. So, and you know what? It worked. It worked for the most part. You know, the band kind of went back to that angry angry hardcore style. Although not really at that point yet. But, you know, they did, for the most part, blew everyone's high expectations away with this album. And I think they did a really good job. The Ghost Note Symphonies Volume 1. Do you want Rise Against to be a chamber pop band? No? Well, too bad that's the entire album. Rise Against is a chamber pop, made a chamber pop album. Albeit, it's a chamber pop album that mostly is just a re-recorded versions of their old songs from back in the day. You know, stuff like Survive, or I don't know, it's Survive. I know it's like gotta be like, all I know is like the Angel, like the Angels. I think it was Voices Off Cameras. Okay, so we have The Violence, Audience of One, Faint Resemblance, House on Fire, Like the Angel, Miracle, Savior, Wait for Me, Far From Perfect, and Voices Off Camera. Okay, so that is pretty much what Ghost Note Symphonies Volume 1 is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a chamber pop album, and it is actually a really good one. You know what? I will definitely say that right now. Rise Against, I know a lot of people love their hardcore punk stuff, but if they make a chamber pop album, I will totally be fine with that, because Tim's vocals are great, the band has done well acoustically, and I think that if they ever do make a chamber pop album, or at least have influences of it, I would totally be fine with that. And I think this album, it's been a long time since I listened to this album, funny enough, but I remember enjoying it back then, so I'm definitely going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the A column, just in case, because I really enjoyed it. I thought that the covers were really melodic. I thought that they were amazing. And again, it's only just like them just, you know, doing these songs in a more acoustic and chamber pop fashion. They're re-recorded songs, but they did a really good job. I can't knock on them for that. And then lastly, we have the one and only The Nowhere Generation, their recent album. And let me tell you this right now, their recent album is easily, without a doubt, their best album. And I can go ahead and say why. because this came out, because we all knew that 2020 was shit year. We all knew that 2020 was trash. It was horrible, terrible. Everyone was isolating themselves in their own house, and if not, they had to like go outside and had to make sure that they protect themselves from the COVID-19 pandemic. It was terrible. It was a terrible year for everyone. And and during that same time, there were also other stuff happening. There was the Black Lives Matter movement. There was so many dramas that was happening in the United States. Donald Trump was still in office. And I will definitely say this right now. This might be the most hardcore this band has ever been since maybe Revolutions Per Minute. I'm not even kidding. Well, okay, maybe Siren Song as well, a little bit. Either Siren Song or Revolutions Per Minute, but this band had like so much energy, so much venting, that it actually felt relatable. Like past Rising Against albums have always felt, I mean, Siren Song always felt relatable on a personal level, but the Nowhere Generation felt relatable on a substantial level. It felt relatable in the sense of what we've been going through for the past, not only just last year, but also the past couple of years as well. And this album, for the most part, succeeded at all of that. I want to put this in the S tier. I really, really do. I really do. You know what? I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put it in the S tier. Even though it's not necessarily a perfect album, it's a near perfect album. And in my humble opinion, they succeeded in every storefront of what they were trying to do here. They had a lot of things they wanted to talk about, and I'm not sure if they actually agree with them or not, but you can't deny the fact that musically speaking, this is amazing. And also, I think this record was also the first time they went independent. I think it was like Loma Vista Records. That's an independent record. Yeah, this is the first time they went independent since 2003. So if I hear anyone saying that the band was selling out again, I'm just gonna like, I don't know, just like flick them in the nose or something. I missed the first time. But overall, though, that is my Rise Against tier list. That is, in my humble opinion, my personal favorite Rise Against records, or the way that I rank them. If you guys have a favorite Rise Against record, let me know. I would definitely be interested in that. If you agree with this, then let me know. If you disagree, then let me know. Obviously, of course, you might disagree with the statement. You might leave a comment calling me an idiot, but I don't care. Whatever. But regardless, though, I hope I do more of these in the future, because this is a lot of fun to do. But with that said, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourself a fantastic day. Take care.